Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to Worldview. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we're going to talk about China, more specifically, the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, for some time now, there has been a lot of buzz in the global media about speculations related to the future of Chinese President Xi Jinping. That is because of his absence from the public eye on certain important events, the most recent being the BRICS summit, which has been recently concluded and was held in Brazil, where instead of Chinese president, another Chinese representative was present there. Also, this is not the first time that these kind of speculations are being heard or written or spoken about Chinese President Xi Jinping. In fact, Xi has been in power for almost 13 years now, and he has a total grip on the power out there. The China is run by the CCP, that is Communist Party, and the CCP is effectively run by President Xi Jinping. Recently, on 30th June, there is a meeting which was held of the CCP's Politburo, which again gives a little bit of a fuel to the speculation. And therein, the meeting, it was decided to go ahead and, reallocate or perhaps retune the responsibilities in the CCP. What that reallocation or refinement or retunement will be, we will only get to know once the CCP decides to make it public. So again, speculation. Whether or not these speculations hold any water, is Xi Jinping planning to retire? Is the president for life has had enough in the power? Is there a dissent in China brewing up against Xi Jinping? Does he have full control over the party and over the country? To try and understand, a deep down analysis of all these aspects and what does it mean for China and of course its immediate neighbor, that is us, India, and the global geopolitics. We're joined by two distinguished panelists today. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with former investor Suresh K. Goel and retired Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, Director of India Foundation as well. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to Dialogus and Worldview. I'll begin with you, Ambassador Goel, since you have, keep a close watch on the developments in China. You've been there, you served there as well. What should we make of these speculations? The first question, which we can start with by answering, is whether or not these speculations hold any water.
Which speculations are you talking about, Vishal? Are you talking about Xi Jinping losing grip on the power or Xi Jinping having dissent? Which kind of speculations are we talking about here? Now, the first thing is, any political system, whether it is communist or it is a system like China, which goes beyond just pure communism, where the military is all powerful really, has a complete stranglehold on the power, or it is democracy like India. There is always dissent. There are always speculations as to who is coming in, who is going out. Even the strongest prime minister in India, sometimes you will see, if you read media, there are speculations. The point is not there being no speculations or there being speculations. There will be speculations all the time. But what we need to understand is whether Xi Jinping is secure in his position as the party general secretary and as the president of China. And I think he is. He is quite secure really where he is, simply for two or three, not simply, but to start with really, for the reason that he is the general secretary of CCP, which keeps all the power in all the power card. He is the chairman of CMC, Central Military Commission, and the very fact that everybody in the Central Military Commission, all the vice chairmen, they are the people who are close to Xi Jinping, and therefore our army, which actually serves the party, is completely under his control. And if the army is under his control, and I remember in 1988, when I was in Beijing and the student demonstrations, the unrest took place, it was basically the person who had control over the army called the shots, even under those circumstances. Therefore, Xi Jinping seems to be secure as far as it. Yes, the Politburo meeting has taken place, but and that was more than a week ago. If there was something which was actually going to be uh, against the interests of Xi Jinping. The people in China would have come to know about it because, again, every system leaks, whether it is China, because there is somebody who will know somebody and who will be told by somebody about what has happened. And there will be murmurs in every
Mhm.
system. So every system leaks, people would have come to buy, not some way or the other, accurate. There's no murmur at all so far, as I
Okay.
know, in the Chinese media. So I think he's secure. But yes, there will be dissent. There are difficulties always, but he rules with a firm hand.
Okay. Jan Katoch, she rules with a firm hand, as Mr. Goel is saying, and it is pretty much visible as well because of the continuous purges which keep on happening in the Chinese system, be it military or civil administration, on allegations of corruption and several other allegations as well. But Xi Jinping is 72 years old, and perhaps is there a thought about bringing up the next line or next generation of leadership out there, devolution of power also, because that's in stark contrast to how Xi Jinping has ruled so far. Complete centralization of power. Is that about to change? Are there indications?
Thank you, Vishal. Vishal, this, the what the ambassador spoke, Ambassador Goel, I tend to agree. I don't, at this point of time, think there is any threat or danger to Xi Jinping. He is firmly in control and he's likely to stay there. That is, of course, we don't know about his health condition or something, but the photographs which I've seen of him, they look pretty good. That is one. Number two, most of the speculation when people are talking about that Xi Jinping is on the way out is from the Western media. I read what has been written in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And when I tried to analyze what they had written, it really didn't make much sense. You see, they are talking about certain issues which I don't think will stand any reasonable test. Now, there are some problems which China is facing. Let's face that. And China is cognizant of it. One, their economy is in a bad shape. Whatever you say about it, their economy is in a bad shape, and uh, there are challenges which they are facing on that front. That is one. But besides that, I don't see any major upheaval going on in China. We have heard, a lot of press reports have come, that from Chinese TV, where people have given strong objections. But then, those sort of things, there are two things. When we are talking of interested parties, let us say when people start talking about poverty in rural areas, or they talk about uh, issues which concern them personally, you will find the party supporting them, and all that thing can come into the media.
Okay.
But when you find anything pertaining to the rights, that, where we want our fundamental rights to be changed or something, which will impact the Communist Party, you don't find anything of that coming out. There is very strict censorship. And I haven't seen any change in that, despite what people say that, okay, a lot of things are coming out in the media against Xi Jinping. Uh, I've found no real evidence of that.
Okay.
So basically, I think what this thing has been generated. In my view, I think it has come a lot from the Western media. The truth, unfortunately, we will never know. The
Okay.
system is opaque. We will not know till it comes out. But as of now, if I have to place a bet, I will place a bet that Xi Jinping is staying.
Okay. And if we have to wait for detailed reports or direct reports coming in from the state media or the Communist Party, perhaps we might have to wait till 2027 when the next Communist Party plenary takes place. That's almost 2 years from now. But coming back to you, Mr. Goel, since you mentioned 1980s when you were there as well, can we draw some sort of parallel out there? Because when I look back in the history, Deng during that particular period had also withdrawn from the public eye for quite some time before his famous southern tour, and that's where the real change started appearing under Deng's regime. So, is it some sort of a strategic withdrawal as well, as far as Xi Jinping is concerned? Because there is a economic trouble within the Chinese economy. He will have to find solutions to that also. And then there are geopolitical issues also, wherein China eventually will have to take a hard stand at some point in time later on.
One or two things here. First of all, I think you are quite right in the sense that there have been instances in the past when prominent leaders, the top leadership, has gone out of the public eye for fairly long time, and they have reappeared. But you will also observe when they reappear after a long time, there is usually a big event that takes place in terms of either change in the party or change in the policy or one change or the other. And therefore, what I would expect is that if at the moment Xi Jinping is keeping out of public eye, has not appeared in public for a long time, uh, he probably is really charting out his next move. He is planning as to what he needs to do next in terms of, first of all, consolidation of his own power, because there are always something or the other that happens. Even within the Central Military Commission, you remember that the former defense minister, what was his name? Li Shanghui. Li
Mm-hmm.
Shanghui, when he had to go, he had to lead the membership of the CMC also. The next, and for the first time, it so happened that the next defense minister was not a member of the CMC.
Mm-hmm.
It never happened before. So he's planning, I think, as to how to consolidate his power, number one. Number two, he's old. Yes, he's old, but he's not much older than many of our politicians. And please remember one thing, that in many ways, the Chinese political, not system, but the Chinese political functioning is not very different from India. In India, for example, if today, uh, I will not take any names, I was actually going to take names, but if a minister or a prime minister or president or somebody in power is there, it's not basically because the party has selected him or her, but he or she is there because he has had a long history of strong base in the
Mm-hmm.
party. Always. Unless there is a strong base in the roots in the party, he will not continue because machinations, conspiracies will always continue. And he has to keep his ears to the ground. And that happens only when there are people who will come and tell him or her. So, similarly, in the Chinese system also, if Xi Jinping continues, it's not because just of CMC, but because the way he has come up through the routes from Fujian onward,
Mm-hmm.
Shanghai, he has developed a very strong base of people who support him and who will work with him, and they will let him know. One more thing, I mean, we think China is a very close society,
Mm-hmm.
which it is. But today, the social media, even in China, has become hyperactive. And more or less within a day or so,
Mm-hmm.
you keep or start having these kind of posts in Chinese media, social media, etc., as to what is happening. And you get to know that there is something afoot, even if, as Major General Dhruv said, we don't know what, but we know that something is. Most of the Chinese watchers will have an inkling that something is about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in this case, there is no inkling even in the social media, in Chinese social media, that there is something afoot. And I go back to my first sentence, whether there is any new policy direction is afoot or not. Uh, this only brings me to what we saw in 2013
Mm-hmm.
when Xi Jinping began his campaign, anti-corruption campaign, and he began to remove people from the party hierarchy one after the other. Nobody had any idea that this is what he's doing. Everybody was comfortable in the assumption that Xi Jinping is close to them. It
Mm-hmm.
turned out that he was not. So, but there is a big difference between 1980 and 1988 now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the basic objective during the time of Deng Xiaoping was economic growth, economic development, building up Chinese economy, because Deng Xiaoping, having come through the huge upheavals and the way he had been brought back to power, please remember that he had been purged in the
Indeed.
Cultural Revolution, but he came back. The way he had come back, he knew and people knew that he does not have to struggle very hard for his continuation.
Mhm.
And therefore, he could focus really what he wanted to be the best, the Chinese reforms. And he did that. Uh, in fact, I'm sorry, I'm taking too long a time,
No, no,
but because I was
that's
there.
perfectly all right, Mr. Goel. In fact, you're making a very interesting comparison out there. But I'll take this to General Katoch, and then I'll come back to you
Okay,
because
just 1 minute. I
yes.
was saying one thing. Let me complete that.
Hmm.
Because the Chinese economic reforms were a very strange kind of an animal. Unlike in India, where the economic reforms began by focusing on urban sector, in China, the economic reforms began in the rural areas by giving economic liberty to the farmers who could then use the money, who could then grow what they wanted and use the money to spur up not consumption but capital formation.
Hmm.
So I'm speaking very briefly, but that was very interesting kind of a phase.
Indeed.
So yes.
Indeed, and that comparison, raises one or two questions. I'll take that to General Katoch out here. General Katoch, as Ambassador Goel is pointing out, when we do this comparative analysis, and because I, initiated that by trying to figure out as to whether Xi Jinping is also taking two steps back to try and formulate a strategy to come up with some historic decisions. Now, the question is that there are stark differences as well because Xi Jinping has completely gone opposite to Deng's philosophy, which was, hide your strength and bide your time. Xi Jinping it doesn't follow that policy. China under Xi Jinping is not at all following that kind of policy. But again, coming to the decision making part as to we taking a step back to try and come to some important decisions, General Katoch, do you believe that those decisions might be more related to China's internal economic turmoil or maybe internal politics in the CCP, or they might have a global outlook as well? Perhaps, some decisions related to the global geopolitics, which might have an overall impact and then end up impacting India also.
Actually, when I was looking into the economy specifically, because your question is related to that, what Xi Jinping did was he is giving a lot of weightage to the public sector. And here, the private sector, you see, has been put down. Now, they are trying to, in the last plenum which they did, they were the plenum which the third plenum which was held, they were talking about public and private, going hand in hand. But really, it doesn't work that.
Mhm.
That the private entrepreneurship which was supposed to be there, that has to now conform to a socialistic sort of pattern, which benefits the CCP. Now, I don't know how that is going to work, because that is good. That is the thrust of what Xi Jinping is trying to do, and that is where it differs from what Deng did. Deng
Okay.
said, "Bide your time," but China thinks their time has come. Their time has come. Actually, there's no need for them to bide their time.
So
Question
do you
is,
believe do you believe, General Katoch, that whatever Xi Jinping might be planning or might be strategizing about will have more to do with China's economic issues or China's internal politics or CCP's internal politics, and less to do with or nothing to do with the global geopolitical events?
no, I think it will be both. You see, one is the global geopolitical events as to how to deal with the United States, right? That has been their long-term aim. That is not going to change. But what he's also trying to do now, it is that socialistic pattern which he wants to do, and get the private sector onto that.
Mhm.
That is going to be a very difficult one, and I think that is the problem which he's having right now. In one report, which I read, that uh, the deficit which they're facing is tremendous. So
Okay.
unless the private players really come in and start getting the economy, you don't expect a private player to be that a government sort of chap who says, okay, I'll do welfare for the public. It doesn't work that way. The private
Okay.
enterprises, he's doing it for himself. If you're going to do something for the state, then it doesn't work that way. It works if you're doing something for science and technology, etc., etc. The government puts in its resources, and you build up that system. But if it's simply a question of reinvigorating your economy, if you are trying to tell the private sector to behave like the public sector in a manner which they will have a socialist mindset, I don't think that's going to work. That is the problem which he is facing, which is why the Chinese economy is getting a hit. But they are very determined to be the number one. For
Mhm.
them, India still is an obstacle because they don't want a peer competitor in Asia, and getting up to the USA will take some time.
Okay, okay. Mr. Goel, economic aspect is really an important one, and General Katoch has dwelled upon that. But apart from that, when we look at the global geopolitics and tackling USA from China's point of view, and also keeping Russia on its right side, and making all the right moves as far as other multilateral forums like BRICS is concerned, and then of course making the right moves on Russia-Ukraine conflict or the Israel-Iran or Israel-Hamas conflict, and all these geopolitical issues. Do you think Xi Jinping might make a comeback with some strong decisions or some strong formulations on geopolitical issues as well? Because he would rather be completing his third term now.
Vishal, let us be clear about one or two things as far as China's geopolitical strategy and the economic thinking is concerned. Uh, Very, very briefly on the economy, number one. Uh, What Chinese economic model has done and what people don't realize very often is that there are now huge disparities even within the Chinese society, in the urban areas and the rural areas. You will see it from the pictures in the Western media or elsewhere about the
Hmm.
Chinese workers living in actually very, very horrible conditions near the factories. But they are very disciplined workers, they continue to work, but the conditions are not particularly good, but they are party members, the parties.
Okay.
Therefore, there will be no rebellion, but it's not really that great in that sense. But number one. Number two, there is a huge excess capacity now in China. So unless China finds the markets, they will have difficulty to keep up their growth.
Hmm.
Combined with that is a technological advancement. Today, one thing where China has done very, very well compared to every other country is technology. I mean, today there are factories in China which don't require people. They operate entirely on automation and through robots. They're called dark factories.
And and, and,
Because
and, and to top it, it also drives the rare earth minerals,
absolutely, absolutely,
industry and market
absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. So I think China's economic challenges are something, but China is confident that the world depends on them, and they're not too worried about this thing really, and they
Okay.
know how to leverage their strength. And that is as far as the economy is concerned. Geopolitically, geopolitically for China, the only competitor at this stage is the USA. Everything else has to be tuned in or orchestrated in terms of their own strategy. USA is the biggest challenge, not only in terms of approaching being the number one power, not just economically or militarily, comprehensive national power. And the China, given the kind of economic development they've got and the way they're going, and with the technological development, including AI, China, I think, is not very far behind, even if there are 20 or 30 years gap between the
Hmm.
China. But for China, the biggest challenge really is in its immediate region, Southeast Asia,
Hmm.
Taiwan, Japan, Korea. India doesn't count very much. It hurts me to say that, but
No,
India
but
is
facts, Ambassador Goel.
yeah, India is an irritant, but India is not a challenge or a competition anymore for China. Therefore, China will come into Galwan when they see that we are getting too close to the USA or we are becoming too big for our boots. I hope I have not taken off the show for what I'm saying, but this
Not
is
at
the
all.
fact.
Not at all. Please
Sorry.
feel free to express your views and opinions
So
till the time they are backed by facts.
these are facts. I mean, you saw in Galwan. I'm not. Yes, our army is very strong. We did very, very well. We gave a good tough fight to the Chinese. But why did they behave the way they did at all in Galwan? There was no reason
Hmm.
because strategically, in terms of the positioning, they were there already. So for China, it is an irritant, and India will continue to be an irritant if they feel that we are not behaving ourselves. And that's the reason you will see in all negotiations, even today, even at
Hmm.
the level of the national NSAs, it's really what you said: 1 foot front, 2 foot back. Sometimes they will say something, but they will not
Okay.
be prepared to translate anything into writing. So, China geopolitically Taiwan is in the party constitution. By 2050, Taiwan has to be integrated with China. Whether Xi Jinping will give up on the same objective or how he will do or leave it for the future, I don't know. But politically, geopolitically, for China, the most important region where it faces the USA is Indo-Pacific, Europe, etc. They are the kind of areas which
Okay.
will help or not help, etc. But they will keep an eye on this. Yeah.
Okay. General Katoch, let me bring you here on the last question on the issue, which point which was raised by former Ambassador, Suresh Goel as well. Economy we've spoken about, geopolitical issues we've spoken about. On the India issue, of course, from the China's perspective, do you agree that India is an irritant rather than being the biggest, largest competitor? As of now, for them, the biggest competitor, enemy number one, if we call that, would be USA. And if we look at from India's perspective, what should we anticipate and how should we tackle that? Because we continue to grow. We have our growth trajectories and strategies there as well. If at all that is an irritant to anybody in the world, well, let it be.
Very frank, no, Ambassador Goel has got his view. I have a different view, right? It's not a question of being right or wrong. It's just a different view. China is concerned about India. The Chinese have always believed in one mountain there can only be one tiger, or one lion, whichever animal you want to call it. And India happens to be the second one, right? They will do everything in their power to put India down. It is they don't worry about Japan or Korea or all these fellows. They're two small countries, It doesn't matter. They're not looking at the condition of India today. They are looking at the condition of India 10 years from now. They are concerned. In every single meeting of mine which I've held with them, they are concerned, including the Indian Ocean Conference which my foundation hosts. My God, the concerns which they have. It is tremendous. So we are the competitors. They are concerned about India. Galwan, they tried because they were thinking Prime Minister Modi is getting too up. Let us put this man down. It didn't work. I don't think they will repeat that mistake again. They haven't gone to, Xi Jinping didn't go to BRICS specifically because Prime Minister Modi was a chief guest. I mean, he was being felicitated as you know, it is a state visit for him. And that would have shown Xi Jinping in a bad light. He chose to stay away. Right, that is the level of concern which he has.
So, Jal Katoch, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is that India is a competition for China. They do recognize it, they do acknowledge it, but they don't want to acknowledge it publicly because by doing so, they will then themselves raise the bar that high, which they don't want.
They, as far as China is concerned, their only peer competitor is the USA. But for that, they've got to ensure that India remains down. Let me put it that way. Right. Now, the question is, there's one more thing which I'd just like to state, as a very small remark. Regardless of the fact that whether Xi Jinping remains or not, as of now, I think he's going to remain. But let us say he goes and someone else comes in. Very frankly, it makes no difference to Chinese foreign policy with respect to India. We will continue to face our challenges on the borders. China will continue to use Pakistan as a vassal state against India. They will continue to use Bangladesh now as a new vassal state against India. That is the reality. And I have now claimed that we are not fighting a three-front war or a 2.5-front war. We are fighting a one-front war. That front is China. But Pakistan is a part of that front and Bangladesh and anybody else, but it is a one-front war. China is our competitor. For China, the US is the competitor, but for us, that is the way it is. Vishal.
Okay.
Unless you add Turkey to it.
Turkey is okay. It's a fair one. Turkey too.
Well, perhaps, it looks like that, yes, there is a semblance of thoughts out there. It's like looking at a particular puzzle from two different angles. And both of you gentlemen are right as far as China is concerned, as far as Xi Jinping is concerned. And it is pretty much clear as well that as far as India's position is concerned in this entire equation, we do have our policy to follow. We do have our economic strategy, economic growth strategy to follow. And if at all that becomes an irritant for anybody in the world, then it is for them to go ahead and rectify their mistakes or rectify their path and align with us and our interests as well. Because India is on the path to growth out there. That is pretty much clear. But as far as China is concerned, well, of course, for them, USA is competitor number one, enemy number one also in some analysts, posts and write-ups and articles as well, whichever way you want to call it. But Xi Jinping is here to stay. That's what the analysis or the kind of sense which I get from both of you gentlemen trying to analyze and take a deep down, dive analysis on that. Clearly, the man seems to be in command and, of course, seems to be strategizing as well to deal with the biggest problem China has right now, that is their economic turmoil and the internal economic growth and policies as well. Let's wait and watch as to what Xi Jinping comes up with when he comes back on the public stage. What are the new changes or new ideas or new policies he comes up with? And then perhaps we and the rest of the world can think about it and deal with it as well. Thank you so much once again, Ambassador Goel and General Katoch, for joining us and sharing with us your inputs, valuable inputs, and your time also. We'll come back again on the next episode of Worldview with a different topic and try and analyze that for our viewers as well. Keep watching Worldview and Dialogues. Thank you.